Welcome to Cozy Fantasy Studio, where gentle magic and sleep stories begin. Tonight, we wander through the world's most famous elven tales, stories of moonlit woods, enchanted music and timeless love. So find a soft place to rest, let your breath slow and your thoughts drift with the rain. The night is deep, the forest breathes, and the elven tales are waiting. Once, in the softest season of autumn, when rain laced the air with silver threads, there stood the woods of Carterhaugh, a tangle of birch and oak that breathed like a living dream. Travelers said the leaves there shimmered a deeper green, for they were brushed by elven hands. Janet, the daughter of a noble house, loved that forest more than any hall of stone. She walked its winding paths alone, her cloak damp with mist, her heart steady and wild. The townsfolk warned her, in murmurs half fear, half reverence, that Tam Lin guarded Carterhaugh, an elf knight who took a toll from any who entered without leave. Some claimed he was a spirit of the wood, others whispered he had once been human, stolen by the Queen of Elfland. But Janet only smiled when she heard such tales. The forest called to her. Its mossy hush was kinder than gossip. Beneath dripping branches, she gathered white roses, and with every stem she plucked, she felt the pulse of the earth, a slow, musical heartbeat deep below the roots. The rain smelled of fern and river stone. When the clouds thinned for a moment, a shaft of gold filtered through and turned each droplet into fire. And there, between one breath and the next, he appeared. Tam Lin. His eyes were bright as starlight seen through water, his cloak dark as storm-wet velvet. "Why do you pluck the roses of Carterhaugh, maiden?" he asked, his voice soft but unearthly. Janet's heart trembled, yet she stood firm. "Because they are fair," she answered. The knight looked at her for a long while, as though remembering something distant. A candle in a life once mortal. "Few dare speak so plainly here," he said at last. "These flowers are the Queen's gift. None take them without a price." "What price would you have me pay?" she asked. "A kiss," he whispered. And so beneath the dripping trees, she gave the elf knight what he asked. And in that moment the world seemed to turn upon its axis. Leaves swirled, rain hushed, and the forest exhaled a breath older than time. From that day on, Janet's thoughts wandered always back to Carterhaugh. The hall felt colder, the candles dimmer. She would sit by her window, listening to the rain, and feel the memory of that kiss, like a seed quickening beneath her heart. The people whispered again that she had met the forest's guardian, that her eyes now shone with an elfin light. Janet neither denied nor confirmed it, but when the next rain came, she wrapped her cloak tight and walked once more to Carterhaugh, her footsteps fading into the whisper of leaves. The woods awaited her, silver with mist, and somewhere among them the elf knight lingered, bound by a spell and a memory he could not forget. Outside, the rain falls steady and kind, as though the sky itself listens to their story. The rain deepened that night, a quiet river of sound moving through the leaves of Carterhaugh. Janet stood once more among the silver birches, her cloak soaked through, her breath curling in the cool air. The forest seemed half asleep, the world between worlds thinning with each drop that touched the moss. She called softly, "Tam Lin." The name drifted through the mist, and from the shadow of an ancient oak came the figure she had dreamed of. His eyes glimmered faintly green, as though the forest itself looked out from within them. Yet tonight there was sorrow behind his calm. "You should not have come again," he said. His voice carried a strange weight, as if bound to the earth by unseen chains. "I could not stay away," Janet answered. "Tell me what keeps you here, for you are no ghost, and yet no man free." Tam Lin looked at the ground, at the rain pooling around their feet. "Long ago I was mortal," he murmured. "A rider who strayed into the woods on a hunt. The Queen of Elfland took me when I fell from my horse, and I have served her ever since. Every 7 years she rides to pay her tithe to hell, and this very night I am to be her offering." Janet's heart grew tight in her chest. The rain whispered faster, as if urging her to listen. "Then there must be a way to save you," she said. "There is," he answered, "but it is perilous. When the Queen and her host ride through the night, you must wait by Miles Cross. There, as they pass, you must pull me from my horse. Yet beware, for she will change me into many shapes to break your hold. I may become an adder, or a burning brand, or a lion fierce. Still, if you can cling to me until the last bell of midnight, I shall be free." The air trembled with the memory of his words. Janet placed her hand on his, cold as riverstone. "Then I will wait," she whispered. Tam Lin bowed his head. "You are brave, Janet of Carterhaugh. Hold fast and do not fear." The world shifted, and the forest seemed to dissolve into shadow and moonlight. Janet returned home in silence, the rain trailing her steps like a benediction. She waited, listening to the long hours of the night, until at last the appointed time arrived. At Miles Cross, the wind rose and the rain turned to silver threads. From afar came the sound of hoofbeats, soft at first, then thunderous. A cavalcade of riders emerged from the dark. The Queen of Elfland, tall and radiant, her eyes cold as the moon, her cloak woven of night itself. Behind her rode countless elves, their bridles hung with starlight. Janet's heart raced. She hid among the ferns, her hands trembling, until she saw him. Tam Lin, bound in silver chains, his face pale but his gaze steady. As the Queen passed, Janet stepped forward, her courage lit from within. She reached up and seized Tam Lin from his horse. A cry went up from the elven host. The Queen raised her hand, and the night itself seemed to twist. Tam Lin changed within Janet's arms, first a serpent cold and coiling, then a flaming brand that scorched her cloak, then a great beast with eyes like embers. Still, she clung to him, whispering his name. The forest roared with enchantment, thunder rolling above the hills. Yet Janet did not let go. The final bell of midnight rang, clear as crystal, and suddenly, the fire, the serpent, the beast, all were gone. In her arms lay a man, warm and human, his heartbeat steady against her own. The Queen of Elfland gazed upon them. Her voice was like distant rain. "Had I known this, I would have torn his heart from his breast. But the spell is broken, and he is yours." She turned her horse, and the elven host vanished into mist. Janet knelt in the wet grass, holding Tam Lin close as the rain softened into a whisper. The dawn was near. Pale light began to breathe through the trees. He opened his eyes, mortal once more, and smiled faintly. "You have freed me," he said. And somewhere in the woods, a nightingale began to sing. The storm eased, leaving only the hush of leaves and the scent of new rain, as if the world itself had exhaled. The dawn came soft and silver over Carterhaugh. The rain at last had quieted to a slow mist, rising from the moss like breath. Janet and Tam Lin sat beneath the old birch trees, their cloaks heavy with dew, their hearts light with the hush that follows wonder. For a long while they did not speak. The forest seemed to listen on their behalf. The air carried the faintest scent of wild roses, the same Janet had once gathered when her journey began. But now, those flowers were no longer forbidden. They were gifts of the earth, free as her heart. At length, Tam Lin spoke, his voice fragile, as though newly made. "I remember the sound of rain," he said quietly. "It was the last thing I heard before the Queen took me, years ago, in another life. I thought I'd never feel it again, never know the weight of it upon my skin." Janet looked at him and smiled. "Then let it be your crown," she said, "the blessing of all things mortal." The wind moved softly through the birches, scattering a few remaining leaves. The forest had changed. Where once the air shimmered with enchantment, now it was tender and human again. The spell was gone, and yet the magic lingered, transformed into something gentler. The magic of belonging, of love, reclaimed from shadow. They walked together through the quiet glades, the grass brushing their boots, the rain still whispering faintly in the leaves above. Tam Lin's steps were unsteady at first. Each touch of the ground felt strange to him, as though he were learning to walk anew in a world made of rain and memory. Janet offered her hand, and he took it, holding on as though to the heart of the world. By midday they came to the edge of Carterhaugh. Beyond lay the open moor, and in the distance the grey roofs of Janet's father's hall. The villagers who once whispered of curses and fey enchantments would soon see them both, alive, unharmed and changed. Tam Lin turned once more to the forest. "Will the Queen return?" he asked, though there was no fear in his tone. Janet shook her head. She cannot claim what love has made whole, and in that answer lay the quiet truth of all their story, that no power, not even the deepest enchantment, could withstand the steadfast touch of the heart. They passed beneath the last arch of trees. Sunlight broke through the clouds, and the droplets on every leaf turned briefly to jewels. The woods of Carterhaugh glowed like a cathedral made of rain. Somewhere far within, the faint echo of hooves faded into eternity. That evening, when they reached the hall, the hearth was lit, and the air smelled of bread and heather. Janet's father, though stern, said nothing at first. He looked long at the man beside her, and something in Tam Lin's eyes, honesty or sorrow or both, moved him to silence. Then, quietly, he nodded. No one spoke of elven queens or tides or transformations again. Only the rain told the tale, falling softly over Carterhaugh each autumn, as though repeating an old blessing. Travellers who passed through the glen said the forest was different now, less haunted, more alive. They said the white roses grew thicker each year, their scent mingling with the moss and the rain, whispering of courage and devotion. And if one stood beneath the birches on a still evening, one might almost hear a voice, low, content and human, speaking a woman's name over and over, like a prayer that had finally found its answer. The wind carried it away, out over the hills, where it mingled with the patter of rain and the rustle of distant leaves. The story of Tam Lin and Janet of Carterhaugh faded into legend, and yet never truly ended, for love once freed is a living thing. It wanders forever through the places where it first began. The rain continues, calm and endless. The forest rests. Another tale waits quietly beyond the next drop of water, ready to be told when the night deepens once more. Once again the rain begins, soft and unhurried, a steady whisper upon the fields of autumn. Beyond the rolling heather hills of Scotland, near the banks of the Leader water, stood a lone hawthorn tree. Its blossoms, pale as moonlight, shone even beneath the grey clouds, and travellers often crossed themselves when they passed, for they said it marked a meeting place between worlds. It was there, one quiet evening, that Thomas of Ercildoune came walking with his harp slung across his shoulder. He was a singer, a dreamer and a teller of tales, though some whispered his words held more truth than he himself knew. The air smelled of rain-soaked grass and wood smoke from distant cottages. Sheep grazed upon the slopes, their wool shining faintly with mist. Thomas paused by the hawthorn tree, resting his hand on its rough bark, and hummed a melody older than memory, a tune of longing and of wonder. Then the wind changed, the rain slowed, the light shifted, and in the quiet that followed came the sound of hoofbeats, delicate, musical, as if struck from silver. Down the green hill rode a lady unlike any mortal maid. Her gown was the colour of dawn seen through mist, her eyes deep as still water. Around her throat gleamed a chain of bright gold, and from her saddle hung 7 bells that rang like stars. Thomas felt his heart still within him. He fell to one knee, for he knew without being told who she was. "God save thee, Queen of Heaven," he murmured, awed. But the lady only smiled. "I am no Queen of Heaven," she said softly. "I am the Queen of Elfland." The rain began again, fine and silvery, as if blessing their meeting. Thomas rose slowly. "Then by your leave, fair lady, I would speak with you." She looked upon him long, and there was kindness in her gaze, though it shimmered like something seen through glass. "Few mortals have the courage to stand before me," she said. "What would you have?" Thomas hesitated, the words trembling on his lips. "Only a kiss," he said at last, "for your beauty will haunt me forever if I go without it." The queen tilted her head, her bells chiming softly. "You know not what you ask," she warned, "for if I grant your wish, you shall serve me in Elfland for 7 years. Thomas smiled faintly, though his heart thudded in his chest. "Then let it be so," he said, "for one kiss from you is worth all the world." And beneath the hawthorn tree, with rain falling like silver threads around them, she leaned down and kissed him. In that instant, the earth seemed to turn inside out. The smell of wet grass vanished, the air filled with the scent of honey and summer roses. The light grew strange and golden, and the world of men slipped away like a forgotten dream. Thomas felt himself lifted, drawn into a current of wind and light. When he opened his eyes, he no longer stood upon the hillside. Around him stretched a land of impossible beauty, rolling meadows that glowed beneath a sky of pearl and green, where the streams sang in voices clear as glass. The rain no longer fell, but shimmered upward, as though the air itself rejoiced. Beside him, the Queen of Elfland sat tall upon her horse. "Welcome to my realm, true Thomas," she said, "for your tongue has spoken bold and true, and your fate is sealed." They rode on together through fields of unending bloom. Flowers turned their faces as they passed, and the air rang faintly with laughter, distant, echoing like wind through crystal bells. Thomas looked about him in wonder. Every color seemed alive, each sound a note of some vast and secret song. Yet somewhere in the sweetness of that realm, he felt the faint ache of parting, the memory of rain, of the hawthorn tree, of the mortal world he had left behind. It was not sorrow, only a quiet awareness, like the aftertaste of love. The queen glanced at him, reading his thought. "Fear not, Thomas of Ercheldoune," she said, her voice both tender and strange, "for though this road leads far from your home, it will bring you to truths no mortal tongue has spoken." And so they rode deeper into the green and golden land, where no rain fell and no night came, only a soft, eternal twilight. The wind hummed like a harp string, the earth breathed with hidden magic, and in his heart Thomas felt the first stirring of the gift that would one day make him both poet and prophet, the gift of truth that binds the voice to the heart. The last thing he heard before the dream closed around him was the whisper of the hawthorn leaves, far away, still dripping with rain. The road beneath their horses shimmered like water, winding through a world that breathed of dream. Thomas rode beside the Queen of Elfland, the reins resting loosely in his hands, the sound of the silver bells on her saddle keeping time with his heartbeat. They passed meadows where every blade of grass glowed faintly from within, and rivers that ran clear as crystal over beds of gemstones. The air tasted of apples and honey, and a low hum of unseen music drifted through the hills. Though no sun was visible, everything was bathed in soft gold, as if dawn were eternal in that land. For a while, neither spoke. Thomas watched the light bend through the mist, each ripple a thread of wonder. Then, quietly, he asked, "Lady, where does this road lead?" The queen smiled, a secret curve of her lips. "There are 3 roads before you, Thomas. One is narrow and dark. That is the road to heaven. One is wide and red as clay. That is the road to hell. The third winds green through the hills of twilight. That, my mortal singer, is the road to Elfland. Her words trembled through the air like notes struck upon a harp. Thomas's gaze followed the curve of the path ahead, the green road gleaming faintly beneath the horses' hooves. "And how long must I walk this road?" he asked. "For 7 years," she said softly. "You shall dwell in my realm, neither eating nor drinking as mortals do. For no food or wine of Elfland may you taste, lest you never return." Thomas bowed his head. "Then I shall live on wonder," he said simply. They rode on. The landscape shifted gently around them, the hills folding and unfolding like waves. Trees with silver leaves and trunks of pale amber lined the way. Sometimes they passed strange beings, tall figures crowned with starlight, whose laughter rippled like water over stone. Some bowed to the queen, others vanished into the light as she approached. At length they came to a river as still as glass. On its far bank rose a castle of crystal, each tower catching the soft glow of the eternal dawn. The queen dismounted, and her feet made no sound upon the moss. "This is my hall," she said, turning to him. "Here you shall dwell and learn the speech of truth, for your tongue has earned both gift and burden." She led him inside. The walls were woven with light and shadow, with songs that hummed softly when he passed. There were no servants, yet every candle flamed, every cup filled itself. He felt time fall away like petals drifting from a flower. In those halls, Thomas learned to hear what was hidden. The murmur of leaves told him their stories. The rivers sang of journeys without end. The queen would come to him sometimes, her gaze both kind and distant. She taught him to listen beyond sound, to find meaning in silence. And in that silence, he understood. Truth was not a weapon nor a comfort, but a mirror held steady to the soul. The years passed like a dream. When Thomas looked into the pools that mirrored the ceiling of stars, he saw no difference in himself. The same eyes, the same hands, yet behind them, a deeper knowing had taken root. One day, the queen summoned him to the garden that glowed forever in twilight. She stood by a tree heavy with white fruit that gleamed like pearls. "Your time here draws to its end," she said. "You have learned what few mortals ever do. But remember, when you return to your own world, your tongue shall never tell a lie. It is both your blessing and your curse." Thomas bowed low. "Then I shall speak only what is worth saying." The queen smiled faintly, sadness flickering in her gaze. "So it must be. When next the hawthorn blooms, you shall stand again beneath its branches." She lifted her hand, and the air around him began to shimmer. The scent of rain returned, sharp and real, like waking from a long dream. The sound of water filled his ears. For a moment, he saw her face through the light, luminous, timeless, and kind. "Farewell, true Thomas," she said. "The gift of Elfland goes with you." Then, the light closed like rain upon the hills, and he was alone beneath the hawthorn tree once more. The world was grey and sweetly ordinary. The leader water murmured nearby. A thrush sang from the hedge. Thomas looked down. His harp lay beside him, damp with dew. He touched its strings, and the note that rose from it was unlike any sound he had played before, soft, pure, and filled with memory. He smiled, though his eyes shone with tears, for in that moment he knew he had not dreamed, and that every song he would ever sing would carry the echo of that otherworldly realm. The rain fell again, gentle and endless, mingling with the rhythm of his heart. The rain had returned to the hills of Erkildune, soft and steady, as if the world had exhaled. Beneath the old hawthorn tree, Thomas the rhymer awoke as though no time had passed. Yet when he stood, the ground felt changed beneath his feet, more alive, more knowing. He touched the wet bark, and it seemed to hum faintly beneath his hand. whispering of all he had seen beyond the veil. The morning light crept gently over the moors. Sheep moved like ghosts in the mist, and the Leader water ran silver through the valley. Thomas's cloak was heavy with dew, his harp glistening beside him. He knelt, brushed away the droplets and strummed a single chord. The sound that rose from the strings was clear as crystal, yet deeper than any mortal tone. The birds stilled to listen. He smiled faintly, half in wonder, half in disbelief. 7 years, he murmured, and yet not a moment. As he walked down from the hill, the world felt both familiar and strange. The scent of peat smoke, the cry of a distant shepherd, the damp wind across his face, all were dear, but touched now by something infinite. Each sound seemed to carry a hidden harmony. The very air breathed with quiet magic. When Thomas reached the village, the people stared. They whispered that he had been gone for months, perhaps a year, and thought him dead. Yet here he was, unchanged, his eyes shining like polished stone. Old friends pressed him for tales. "Where have you been, Thomas?" they asked. "Was it to the Holy Land or some far court?" But he only smiled, shaking his head. "I have walked where no road leads," he said softly, "and I have seen what words can never hold." Soon they learned he spoke no falsehood, for every phrase he uttered came to pass. He would warn of storms before the clouds had gathered, or speak of travelers who would soon arrive, and all his sayings proved true. The people called him True Thomas, and though they revered him, they also feared the depth of his gaze. In the quiet evenings, he would sit by the fire, listening to the rain against the window. Sometimes he sang, and the songs carried such sweetness that even the old wept to hear them. They said the music was not of this earth, that the notes glowed faintly like starlight, and the air shimmered when he played. Yet for all his wisdom, Thomas longed sometimes for the sound of the Queen's silver bells, for the soft twilight of her realm. He would lift his eyes to the hills beyond the river and wonder if she remembered him. In his heart he felt her presence still, like a far melody heard through the mist. One day, as spring ripened on the moors, Thomas walked again to the hawthorn tree. It was in bloom, white as snow, the petals trembling in the wind. He sat beneath it, his harp beside him, and closed his eyes. The rain came in light threads, cool upon his brow. Somewhere in the distance, a faint sound echoed, the chiming of bells. He rose slowly, listening. The sound drew nearer, hoofbeats soft and rhythmic, like heartbeats in the rain. And through the mist she came, the Queen of Elfland, shining as before, her cloak woven of twilight, her eyes still carrying that serene and distant grace. "Thomas of Ercildoune," she said, "the time has come." He bowed his head, calm and unafraid. "Then I am ready," he replied. The Queen smiled faintly. "You have spoken truth and kept it well. Come now, and walk again between the worlds." Without another word, he took her hand. The hawthorn petals whirled around them like snow. For a moment, the villagers far below saw a shimmer of light upon the hill, a flicker like lightning that left no thunder behind. When they climbed to the spot, they found only the tree, its blossoms falling gently in the rain, and the faintest sound of music fading into the wind. They said the true Thomas had gone back to Elfland, where time runs in circles and the rain never falls, only glows. Yet sometimes, when a storm passes over the hills of Ercildoune, those who listen closely claim to hear a harp playing among the thunder, a song too pure for mortal hands. And so the tale endures, drifting softly through the centuries, like rain across stone, of the man who spoke only truth, of the Queen who loved him for it, and of the music that still binds their worlds. The rain continues its gentle descent, each drop a heartbeat in the silence, each whisper a promise kept. The rain fell softly across the open moors, each droplet carrying the hush of endless space. The heather bent under its touch, and the sky hung low, pale as smoke. It was on such a day, long ago, that the Elfin Knight first rode from the unseen lands toward the world of men. His horse was white as cloudlight, his cloak deep green and edged with gold thread. He carried no sword, only a harp slung across his back, for his power lay not in battle but in song. Those who heard his music said it could calm the wind or stir the sea, and that his voice, when he chose to sing, could draw dreams from the heart itself. That afternoon, as the rain whispered across the moor, a mortal maiden heard his song. Her name was Annie, and she lived in a stone cottage on the edge of the heather fields, where she spun flax and watched the hills turn violet at dusk. The melody reached her through the mist, a haunting tune that seemed to call her name. She left her spinning wheel and stepped outside. The rain touched her hair and face. The air smelled of peat and wet earth. Far off, she saw a rider crest a hill, moving slow and sure through the grey. The tune grew stronger, the words clearer. My plaid shall be of the finest green, my coat the silken thread, and you shall be my own true love. When all these tasks are sped, the notes trembled like dew upon a spider's web. Annie stood still, listening. When the rider drew near, she saw that his eyes held a strange light, not cruel, but distant, as though reflecting another sky. "Good morrow, fair maiden," he said, his voice quiet as falling rain. "What think you of my song?" Annie's heart fluttered. "It is the most beautiful I have ever heard," she replied. The Elfin Knight smiled. "Then will you be my love, and follow me beyond the moors?" She hesitated, for though his manner was kind, a shiver passed through her. She had heard the old tales, how fair folk lured mortals away with music and never let them return. Yet his song wove around her like light upon water, tender and strange. "I will not give my love so lightly," she said at last. "If you would have me, I must first test your heart as you would test mine." The knight inclined his head. "Speak your challenge then." Annie lifted her chin. "You sing of fine coats and silken threads, then prove your craft. You must make me a mantle from the leaves of summer, sow it with dewdrops, and wash it in the foam of the western sea." The knight laughed softly, a sound like bells in the wind. "And when I have done so, then," she said, "I shall come to you with tasks of my own to give." He studied her for a moment, his eyes gleaming beneath the hood of rain. "You are bold, maiden," he murmured. "Few mortals speak so to me, yet boldness suits you well." The rain deepened, drumming softly on the heather. The knight drew a silver whistle from his belt and blew 3 notes upon it. The air stirred. The sound seemed to open the sky. From the clouds descended a flock of small white birds, each carrying a green leaf in its beak. They circled once, then dropped the leaves at his feet. Annie gasped, but the knight only smiled. "The leaves of summer," he said. "Now the rest awaits." He turned his horse and began to ride westward, his cloak rippling like moss in the wind. The song followed him, faint but clear, until it melted into the sound of rain. Annie stood alone upon the moor, the air cold against her skin. She felt the echo of his music within her chest, a question without answer, a promise without words. That night, she could not sleep. The rain whispered against the roof, and each drop seemed to carry a note of his tune. She rose before dawn and sat by the hearth, the spinning wheel still and silent beside her. When the first grey light touched the window, she whispered into the quiet, "If he can weave a mantle from summer leaves, then I shall answer his song." The wind stirred the door latch gently, as if in reply. Somewhere beyond the heather hills, a harp string trembled in the rain. And so began the old riddle between the mortal maiden and the Elfin Knight, a contest of wit and will, of challenge and charm, carried on beneath the endless sigh of the moorland rain. Days passed, and the rain never left the moors. It whispered against Annie's windows by night and shimmered like mist by day, wrapping the heather fields in quiet wonder. She went about her work as always, spinning flax, tending the fire, mending wool, yet her thoughts wandered far from her cottage. Somewhere beyond the rain, she knew, the Elfin Knight was at his craft. One grey morning, as the dawn crept pale through the clouds, she heard it again, that same soft song, nearer than before. She opened her door, and there he was, riding out of the mist. His cloak glittered with raindrops like stars. Across his saddle lay a mantle of green leaves, sewn with silver thread that glowed faintly even in the dim light. He dismounted and held the garment toward her. "The leaves of summer gathered by dawn," he said, "washed in the foam of the western sea, and dried upon the wind." Annie reached out, touching the edge of the mantle. The leaves were cool and supple as silk. Their scent carried the breath of distant shores. She met his gaze and saw the trace of a smile, proud yet gentle. "You have kept your word," she said softly. "Now hear mine." The knight inclined his head. "Speak, fair one." "If I am to be your true love," Annie said, "then you must first build me a field between the salt sea and the sand, sow it with one grain of corn, and reap it with a leather sickle, then thresh it with your breath alone." The Elfin Knight's eyes brightened, though whether with amusement or admiration she could not tell. "You ask for marvels," he murmured, "yet marvels are the coin of my kind." He touched the silver whistle at his belt once more, and 3 notes rang out across the moor. The rain paused, held in mid-air like beads of glass. Then from the sea far to the west came the sigh of wind, and in that sound there was movement, waves folding themselves into furrows, sand shifting like ploughed earth. The very air seemed to bend to his will. Before Annie's astonished eyes, a stretch of wet sand gleamed gold and rich as soil. The knight scattered a single grain of corn upon it, and from that grain sprang a green shoot, growing tall and strong in the space of a heartbeat. He exhaled once, and the stalk bowed, spilling its harvest into his waiting hands. Annie watched in silence. The rain resumed, gentle and real again, falling upon her face. "Your power is great," she said at last, "but love cannot be won by wonders alone." The Elfin Knight studied her a long while. "Then what more would you have of me?" Annie hesitated, her heart unsteady beneath her cloak. "Only that you prove you can be as mortal as I," she said. "If I am to come with you beyond the moors, I must know that you can walk my path as I would walk yours." At this, the knight grew still. His gaze drifted past her shoulder, toward the humble cottage, the threadbare roof, the small fire smoking at the hearth. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, slowly, he unfastened his cloak and laid it across her threshold. "I will stay," he said. "For one night I shall dwell in your world. I shall sleep beside your fire, eat your bread, and listen to the rain upon your roof. If by morning you still wish me gone, I will trouble you no more." Annie's breath caught. "And if I bid you stay, then the song will be yours, as long as the wind remembers it." That evening, the two sat by the hearth as the storm drifted close around the cottage. The knight's silver harp rested against the wall. Its strings glimmered faintly in the firelight. Annie placed before him a small meal of oatcake and milk. He ate in silence, each motion slow, reverent, as though rediscovering what it meant to hunger, to taste, to live. When the fire burned low, Annie spoke softly. "Do you ever tire of magic?" The knight smiled faintly. "Only of solitude." The rain deepened, drumming gently on the thatch. The sound filled the small room like a lullaby. Before long, his eyes closed and he slept for the first time in 1,000 years. Annie watched the embers fade to gold, her heart calm and full of ache. She knew that come morning, the world might shift again, that his realm might call him back, or hers might bind him fast. But for now, in the hush between raindrops, the balance was perfect. The Elfin Knight dreamed of the mortal rain, and Annie dreamed of a song that could never end. Outside, the moor breathed under the silver sky, and the wind carried their names softly across the heather. Morning came slow and soft across the moors. The rain had quieted to a mist that drifted like breath through the heather. In Annie's small cottage, the hearth still glowed faintly with the night's fire, and beside it sat the Elfin Knight, awake before the dawn. The harp lay across his knees, his fingers brushing the strings as lightly as falling rain. Annie stirred and opened her eyes. For a moment she did not move. She simply listened to the melody that filled the room. It was a quiet tune, half dream, half memory, full of sorrow and promise both. "You play as though you have lost something," she said softly. He smiled without looking up. "Perhaps I have found it," he answered. Outside, the wind carried the smell of rain-soaked earth. The knight set the harp aside and turned to her, his face lit by the pale firelight. "Annie," he said, "you have set me tasks and I have met them all. Will you now come with me beyond the moors?" She sat up slowly, her hair falling loose about her shoulders. "And if I refuse?" "Then I shall go alone," he said gently, "and the song we have woven between us will fade into silence." Annie watched him for a long moment. In the night's quiet hours, she had dreamed of that far green world of rivers that glowed like glass, and skies that never dimmed. But she had also dreamed of her spinning wheel, of the cottage warm with the scent of peat smoke, of the mortal rain that fell as both blessing and burden. "I have thought on your offer," she said, "and I will give you my answer in kind." The knight inclined his head. "Then speak, fair one." Annie rose and went to the door. The world beyond was silver with mist, the moor rolling away into soft shadow. She turned back to him and said, "You've built me a field between the sea and sand. You've sewn a mantle with your own fair hand. But if you would have my love, good sir, then answer me this riddle clear. What is the thread that none may spin, that binds the world without and within?" The Elfin Knight stood silent, his eyes bright with wonder. Then slowly, he smiled. "The answer is love," he said, "for love binds the sea to the sky, the heart to the breath, the song to the silence." Annie nodded. "You have answered well, but love, like the rain, belongs to all. It cannot be kept, only shared." The knight bowed his head. "Then share it with me," he said softly. Annie stepped closer. The air between them shimmered faintly, as if even the mist held its breath. "I will share it," she said, "but I will not be bound by it. I will love you as the rain loves the earth, not to possess, but to renew." The knight's gaze softened. "Then, you are wiser than many who have walked in my realm." He reached for her hand. "Take this gift, Annie of the Moors," he said, placing a small silver ring upon her finger. "It will not hold you to me, but when the wind blows from the west and you hear music among the rain, you will know I am near." She looked down at the ring, the simple band, cool to the touch, catching the faintest light of dawn. When she looked up, he was already fading, his outline dissolving like mist under sunlight. "Will I see you again?" she whispered. His voice came faintly, carried by the rain. When mortal hearts remember wonder, then he was gone. Only the echo of his song lingered, curling around the chimney smoke as it rose into the morning. Annie stepped outside. The heather glistened, every droplet a small jewel. She turned the ring in her hand and smiled through her tears. The moor stretched wide and quiet, but the air still trembled with music. That day she returned to her spinning wheel. The thread moved beneath her fingers, smooth and even, and she found herself humming a new tune, gentle, full of life. Neighbors who passed by her door said they heard her singing softly to the rain, and that her voice carried farther than it ever had before. Years later, when storms crossed the moors, travelers claimed to hear a harp playing between the thunder and the wind. They said it was the Elfin Knight, keeping his promise, his song still circling the world like rain. And so the tale ends as softly as it began, with a maiden's clever heart, a knight's gentle vow, and the eternal whisper of love that never binds but always returns. The rain continues its patient song, soothing, endless, kind. The rain had found its way into every valley that morning, silvering the rooftops and turning the cobbled paths into rivers of light. Beyond the hills, in a quiet kingdom ringed with mountains, stood a great stone castle, old and grey, yet softened by ivy and rain. Within its walls lived a child of uncommon curiosity, Princess Irene. She was small and bright-eyed, with golden curls that caught the firelight. While others found comfort in the safety of the castle, Irene preferred to wander through corridors, stairways, and attics forgotten by time. Her governess often sighed that the child was fearless, though in truth Irene's courage came from wonder, not defiance. To her, every echo was a secret, every shadow a doorway to discovery. One rainy afternoon, when thunder rolled like distant drums, Irene took her lamp and climbed a narrow stair she had never noticed before. The steps wound upward in a spiral, the air cool and still, smelling faintly of lavender and age. She reached a small wooden door, its latch soft with wear. Pushing it open, she found herself in a round room lit by a single golden lamp. At the far end sat a woman at a spinning wheel, her hair silver as moonlight. She looked up and smiled, a smile that felt like a remembered lullaby. "Good evening, my child," the woman said. "You've climbed high to find me." "Who are you?" Irene asked, though her voice was gentle, not afraid. "I am your great-great-grandmother," said the lady. "I have lived here many years, though not all can see me." Her voice was soft as rain on glass, her eyes kind and knowing. Irene, who had always loved stories, felt no need to question what her heart already believed. She walked nearer and saw that the wheel spun threads of silver finer than spider silk. Each glowed faintly, as if holding a piece of light within. "What do you spin, grandmother?" she asked. "A thread of protection," the old lady said. "It is a gift for you, my child. Should you ever lose your way, follow it, and it will guide you home." From beside the wheel, she took a small ring wound with the shining thread and slipped it onto Irene's finger. "Keep it always," she said. "The thread is invisible unless you need it most." Irene looked down at her hand, then up again, but the room had changed. The spinning wheel was gone, the air still and quiet. Only the soft hum of rain filled her ears. She thought for a moment she must have dreamed it. Days passed, and the memory grew faint. The castle hummed with its ordinary life, servants moving through long halls, torches flickering in the damp air. Yet below the castle, beneath the rocks and roots, lived another world entirely, a dark warren of tunnels where the goblins dwelt. They were strange creatures, half cunning, half foolish, who hated the sun and the sound of laughter. And though they rarely climbed to the surface, the miners who worked the mountain said they could sometimes hear the goblins singing in the depths, songs full of clattering rhythm and mischief. One evening, Irene sat by the window of her room, listening to the rain. The sound soothed her, but now and then she thought she heard something else beneath it, a faint tapping, like distant footsteps underground. It might have been her imagination, she told herself. Still, she dreamed that night of dark corridors and eyes glinting like wet stones. The next morning brought brighter skies, and with them came a visitor, Curdy, the miner's son. He was a kind-hearted boy with rough hands and a ready smile, known in the village for his songs as much as for his courage. He brought word from the mines that strange things were stirring below, new tunnels opening, whispers of goblins gathering. "The men think they mean mischief," Curdy said. They've been quiet for years, but the rains have brought them nearer the surface. Iron's eyes widened. And do you think they'll come here? Perhaps, he said, but I'll keep watch if you'll promise not to wander too far alone. Irene promised, though she knew she would still climb the stairs when the rain called her name. That evening, the castle lamps burned low, and thunder rolled again over the hills. Irene crept up the spiral stair with her lamp. She half expected to find the room empty, but there sat her great-great-grandmother once more, the spinning wheel humming softly. The silver thread gleamed in her hands like moonlight caught in rain. "Grandmother," Irene whispered, "the goblins are coming, aren't they?" The old woman nodded. "Fear not, my child. Their mischief cannot touch those who hold fast to love and courage. When the time comes, the silver thread will show you the way." Irene knelt beside her, watching the wheel turn. The sound of spinning merged with the rhythm of the rain, until both became one gentle heartbeat. She felt calm, safe, as if wrapped in the hush between thunder and dawn. "Sleep now," said the old lady. "Dream of light." When Irene opened her eyes, she was in her own bed, the ring still warm on her finger. Outside, the rain sang softly against the stone. Somewhere deep below the mountain, a goblin struck a hammer against rock, and the echo climbed upward, faint and hollow. But above it, in the heart of the storm, the silver thread shimmered, invisible to all but the brave. The rain deepened over the mountains, falling in gentle sheets that turned every stone to silver. Beneath the castle, under the roots and rock, the goblins stirred. Their world was one of echoes, tunnels twisting like serpents, caverns vast and glimmering with hidden water. Though they feared the sun, they loved the sound of dripping caves and the thud of their own heavy feet. Their laughter, when it came, was rough and hollow, like stones rolling in a stream. That night, Curdy, the miner's son, carried his lantern deep into the mountain. The air smelled of earth and damp metal. He had come to see what the goblins were planning, for their hammering had grown louder each night. The miners spoke of hearing voices, low and grumbling, plotting mischief. Curdy crept along a narrow passage, his lamp flickering against the stone. Suddenly, he heard them, the goblins' strange sing-song chatter. He pressed himself into a shadowed niche and listened. "The rain has weakened the walls," said one. "Aye," grumbled another, "and when they crumble, we'll have the castle." "The princess will not laugh then," hissed a third. Curdy's heart thudded. He leaned closer, trying to hear more, but the floor gave way beneath his foot. The sound echoed like thunder. The goblins cried out, "Who's there?" and came running, their lamps throwing monstrous shadows. He turned and fled, ducking through narrow tunnels, his lamp swinging wildly. The goblins' feet pounded behind him, their voices rising in angry song. The passages twisted and forked, but he had explored these caves since boyhood. He knew the turns that led toward the surface. Just when he thought he was safe, the ground fell away, and he tumbled down into darkness. Above him, the lamp shattered, the flame hissed out. All went black save for the faint sound of dripping water. Curdy rose, shaken but unhurt, his hands scraping against damp stone. He groped in the dark, whispering, "This way leads home, it must." But the air grew colder, the echoes stranger. He was lost. Far above in the castle, Princess Irene sat wakeful by her window. The rain whispered against the glass, and unease prickled in her chest. She rose, drawn by a feeling she could not name. The ring on her finger glimmered faintly in the lamplight. Remembering her grandmother's words, she took the ring in her hand and whispered, "Show me the way." At once, she felt a gentle tug. The silver thread shone before her, faint and fine as moonlight, stretching out of the room and down the stair. She caught up her lamp and followed. The thread led her through silent corridors, past sleeping guards and closed doors, down into the cellars, and then to a hidden passage she had never seen before. The air grew damp, the walls rough with stone. Still the thread gleamed ahead of her, pulling her onward. Down, down she went, until the sound of the rain faded and another sound took its place, the distant echoing drip of water on stone. The thread slipped through a crack in the wall and vanished into the dark beyond. Taking a breath, Irene squeezed through after it. She emerged into a tunnel, dimly lit by a faint blue glow. Her heart fluttered, but she held her lamp high and followed the shining thread as it wove through the caverns. Around her came strange noises, the scrape of claws, the low murmur of goblin voices. She crept quietly, trusting the light before her. At last, she came to a narrow chamber where the thread ended, coiling softly around a figure slumped against the wall. It was Curdie, his face pale in the lamplight, his hands bruised. She knelt beside him. "Curdie," she whispered. "Wake up, it's Irene." He stirred, blinking in disbelief. "Princess, how did you find me?" "I followed my thread," she said simply. "It led me straight to you." He looked down and saw the faint glimmer of the silver strand still wrapped around her hand. "Then your grandmother's gift was no dream." "No," Irene said, smiling through her fear. "But we must hurry, the goblins are close." Even as she spoke, footsteps echoed from the tunnel beyond. Curdie leapt up, gripping a loose rock as a weapon. The goblins' lamps flickered into view, their laughter low and eager. "This way," Irene cried, and tugged at the silver thread. It tightened, glowing brighter, leading them back through the maze of tunnels. The goblins followed, their cries bouncing from the walls, but the thread led true, turning where the paths forked, rising through narrow clefts, guiding them toward the surface. At last they saw the faintest hint of daylight ahead. They scrambled upward, the goblins' shouts fading behind them. A cool wind met their faces, and then they were out, into the open air, the soft rain washing away the dust and fear. Irene sank to her knees, laughing and crying all at once. Curdie knelt beside her, breathless. "You saved my life," he said. "No," she whispered. "The silver thread did." The castle loomed in the mist above them, safe and quiet. The rain fell steady and kind, as if sealing the passage behind them. Down below, in the dark, the goblins muttered and cursed. The tunnels dripped with water, and somewhere among them, the faint glow of the thread shimmered once more before fading into silence. Morning broke in veils of pearl and rain. The castle towers glimmered like wet stone lanterns, and the air smelled of moss and new beginnings. In her chamber, Princess Irene awoke with the silver ring still warm on her finger. For a moment she lay still, listening to the steady rhythm of the rain. Then she smiled, the kind of smile born from bravery remembered in dreams. Below in the village, Curdie told the miners what had happened in the night. The tunnels, the goblins, the silver thread that had guided them home. Many shook their heads in wonder, though some doubted still. Yet when they went down into the mountain again, they found the goblins' work undone, their walls collapsed, their plans lost to the flood of underground springs. The rain had found its way even into their deepest halls, soft and unstoppable. Meanwhile, Irene climbed once more the narrow stair to her great-great-grandmother's room. The air grew cooler as she rose, carrying the scent of lavender and old stone. When she opened the door, the room was filled with a pale golden light. The spinning wheel turned quietly, though no hand touched it. The old lady smiled from her chair. "So, my child," she said, "you have seen what courage can do." Irene ran to her and took her hand. "The thread led me true, grandmother. Even in the dark, even when I was afraid." The old woman nodded, her eyes bright. "That is its nature. The thread does not change the path. It only shows that one is never lost. Remember this, Irene. The way of the heart is often hidden, but never gone." Irine rested her head against the woman's knee. "Will the goblins come again?" she asked. "They will always dwell where fear and greed take root," her grandmother said softly. "But light grows in the heart of those who walk without despair, and you, my dear, have brought that light to others." The spinning wheel slowed, the silver thread gathering into a single gleam. "Now, return to the world below," said the old lady. "Your friend will need your song more than your sword." Irene turned to leave, but as she reached the door she hesitated. "Will I see you again?" Her grandmother smiled. "When the rain sings against your window and you think of courage, I will be near." The child descended the stair. As she went, the light behind her dimmed until it was gone, leaving only the soft hum of rain. That evening, Curdie came to the castle. His hands were rough from the mine, but his eyes shone with something new, the calm of one who has walked through darkness and seen light. "The goblins have gone," he said. "Their tunnels are flooded. The miners are safe." "Then all is well," Irene said. "Come, I want to show you something." She led him to the window where the rain fell steady and fine. "Look," she said, "do you see how each drop catches the light? That is how the thread looked when it guided me. Perhaps it is still there, though we cannot see it." Curdie nodded slowly. "Maybe the thread runs through everything, even between you and me." They stood together in silence. The rain whispered against the stone, weaving its music through the quiet room. Irene thought of the goblins below, now silenced by the water's song, of her grandmother spinning light in some hidden chamber, and of the thread that wound unseen through every heart that dared to trust its way. That night, when the moon rose over the hills, a single silver gleam traced the edge of the mountain, a reflection perhaps, or something more. It shimmered faintly, like a promise kept. In time, the tale of the princess and the miner became legend. Children sang of the silver thread that led through darkness, of the rain that drowned fear and awoke hope, and in the deep places of the earth, where the goblins once plotted, the sound of dripping water echoed like laughter. The castle slept, the rain fell, and somewhere beneath the mountain a faint golden light glowed still, the last spark from the wheel of a kind and ancient woman spinning courage into the heart of the world. The rain that had wandered through mountains and moors now fell in the kingdom of Athens, soft as the sigh of summer. The air smelled of roses and wet grass, and the night trembled with the promise of midsummer, that strange turning of the year when dreams slip easily into waking. In that gentle season, 4 young hearts found themselves tangled in love's bewildering spell. Hermia, brave and steadfast, loved Lysander, a poet's soul who swore his heart was hers alone. Yet her father wished her to wed Demetrius, proud and restless, who in turn was loved by gentle Helena, whose kindness went unseen. The king decreed that Hermia must obey her father's will, or be forever parted from her home. So under the cover of night, with the rain just beginning to fall, she fled the city walls with Lysander by her side. They carried no torches, only faith and longing to light their way. The forest that awaited them beyond Athens was no ordinary wood. It was alive with whispers, the murmur of leaves, the laughter of unseen wings, for this was the realm of Oberon and Titania, the immortal king and queen of the fairies, who ruled over all things that bloom and sing beneath the moon. The lovers walked hand in hand, their cloaks damp with mist. "Here we shall hide till morning," Lysander said. "When the sun rises, we'll find the road to freedom." Hermia smiled, though her heart was weary. "So long as I am with you, every path is home." Unseen by them, a small light darted between the trees. The fairy Puck, Oberon's quick and curious servant, he perched upon a branch, watching the mortals below. "Lost and in love," he whispered. "How sweetly tangled they are." Puck slipped away through the leaves to his master's court. There, Beneath an oak older than time sat Oberon, his crown woven of ivy and starlight. His queen, Titania, danced nearby with her retinue of sprites, their laughter like silver rain. Yet even in such beauty, discord brewed. The king and queen quarreled over a child of mortal birth, a boy Titania had sworn to protect. Their words, though soft, sent ripples through the forest. The wind faltered, the rain held its breath. Oberon, wounded in pride, turned to Puck. "Fetch me the flower called love in idleness," he said. "Its juice, when laid upon sleeping eyes, will make the heart adore the first creature it beholds. With it I shall teach my queen humility, and perhaps restore the peace she has stolen." Puck bowed low and flew into the night, the rain glimmering on his wings. The forest closed behind him, humming with mischief. Meanwhile, the mortal lovers had lost their way among the trees. The paths curved and doubled, the moss muffling their steps. Exhausted, they rested beneath a great elm. The rain fell through the branches, soft and steady. Hermia lay down and soon slept, her face serene. Lysander watched her for a time, then leaned against the trunk and drifted into dreams beside her. Not far off, Helena wandered alone, her heart aching. She had followed Demetrius into the forest, begging him to see her love, but he had turned her away. Now the rain clung to her hair like tears, and her voice trembled as she whispered, "Love looks not with the eyes but with the mind, and therefore is winged Cupid, painted blind." Puck, returning with the magic flower, heard her lament and smiled slyly. "Here's a mortal who wears her heart too plainly. Perhaps I can mend her sorrow, but in the tangle of moonlight and rain, even fairies can mistake their mark." When Oberon found Helena's grief, he pitied her and instructed Puck, "Seek out the man she loves and lay the charm upon his eyes." Through the dripping leaves Puck crept, finding the sleeping pair beneath the elm. "This must be he," he murmured, mistaking Lysander for Demetrius. With a touch of the flower's glowing dew, he anointed the young man's eyelids and vanished laughing into the rain. Moments later, Helena stumbled upon them, still lost and sorrowing. "Lysander," she whispered, thinking him another traveler. He stirred, opened his eyes, and the first face he saw was hers. The magic took hold like dawn flooding the dark. "Fair Helena," he cried, rising to his knees. "Goddess, nymph, perfect divine." Helena drew back in confusion. "Mock me not, Lysander. You love Hermia." "I love thee," he swore, "and will love none but thee." Hermia woke to his voice and beheld him kneeling before her friend. The rain quickened, the forest darkened, and in that bewildering hour, the four hearts of Athens began to spin in circles, love chasing love, truth chasing dream. Above them, the fairies watched, their laughter bright as lightning through the rain. "This night," said Puck, perching high upon a bough, "will grow deliciously tangled before it is done." The forest sighed, and the rain played its quiet drum upon the leaves. All the while, somewhere far away, the queen of the fairies slept, unaware that her king's jest had set even mortals adrift in the storm of love. The forest at Midsummer was a living dream, rain falling through moonlight, leaves shining like glass, and the air so full of enchantment that even the wind seemed to hum. Beneath its trembling canopy, confusion reigned. Love turned to love's mirror, hearts spun round in circles, and every sigh was echoed twice by magic unseen. Under the dripping elm, Hermia searched for Lysander, calling softly through the silver rain. Her voice carried like a lost bird's cry. "Lysander, speak if you hear me." But the only answer was the whisper of leaves. She did not know that he wandered elsewhere in the wood, his eyes lit with enchantment, seeking Helena, not her. Elsewhere, Demetrius, weary from his chase, had thrown himself upon a bed of ferns. The rain fell upon his face and cooled his temper. Even in sleep he murmured Helena's name, the one he had spurned, and now, in some corner of his heart, longed for. From the shadows, Oberon, king of the fairies, watched this mortal tangle with an expression both amused and regretful. "Puck," he called softly, and the little sprite appeared, his wings glimmering with droplets. "You've misplaced your charm," said Oberon, his voice neither angry nor stern. "The wrong man now loves the wrong maid, and the night grows more foolish by the hour." Puck bowed low, trying not to smile. "Forgive me, my lord. Mortals look so alike in the rain." Oberon sighed, though laughter glimmered behind his eyes. "No matter, we shall mend it. Anoint this other with the same flower's dew, and all shall be set right." So Puck, still chuckling, darted through the trees. The rain thickened, hissing through the branches. When he found Demetrius asleep, he brushed the magic gently upon his eyelids, whispering, "When thou wakest, let love's true sight find thee." Moments later, Helena wandered near, her hair plastered to her brow, her heart heavy with the night's bewilderment. She stumbled upon Demetrius and sighed. "Even asleep, you turn from me," she whispered. But as she spoke, his eyes opened, and in that instant, the spell took hold. He rose, gazing at her as though the rain itself had turned to light. "Helena," he breathed, "bright star, sweet soul, forgive my blindness." Helena stepped back, startled. "Mock me not, Demetrius. If you love to jest, find another game." Before he could answer, Lysander burst from the thicket, his voice ringing. "Fair Helena, stay, why flee from me?" Helena's eyes widened. "Now both of you make sport of me. Is there no honesty left in Athens?" Then came Hermia, breathless and drenched, joy flaring when she saw Lysander. "My love, I have found you at last." But Lysander turned cold. "Away, dark lady," he said, though his voice trembled with the power not his own. "My heart is pledged to Helena." The forest held its breath. The rain fell harder, masking the sound of tears. Hermia stepped back as if struck. "You jest," she said softly. "This is a dream." "It is a dream," whispered Puck from his perch above, his laughter blending with the storm. "A midsummer dream, and none can wake till morning." The four mortals circled, love and pain weaving like tangled vines. Helena, bewildered and wounded, cried, "O spite, O hell, I see you all are bent to mock me." Hermia, fierce in her hurt, turned upon her friend. "You thief of hearts, have you bewitched him too?" Oberon watched, troubled now by the chaos his jest had sown. "This shall not stand," he said. "These hearts are not toys for our delight. Make amends, good Puck. Lead them apart till sleep overtakes them. Then we shall lift the spell." Puck bowed. "With pleasure, my king." He flew through the trees, his laughter trailing like the scent of rain. One by one he lured the mortals into different glades, imitating voices, so that each followed the echo of the one they loved. Soon all were lost in the forest's soft confusion. When they could wander no more, weariness overcame them, and they sank into sleep upon the damp moss. The storm broke overhead, thunder murmuring like a drum far away. Puck crept among them, touching each brow with the flower's dew. First Lysander, then Demetrius, whispering, "Be as thou wast wont to be." The rain eased, the forest brightened with the promise of dawn. Above the sleeping mortals, Oberon and Titania met once more, for the same magic that had tangled mortal hearts had also touched their own. Titania, charmed into loving a creature of absurd appearance, now awoke free of her spell. Her eyes softened when she saw her king. "Oberon," she said, "how foolish we have been." He took her hand, and in their clasp the forest seemed to breathe again. "Peace returns," he murmured. "Let laughter follow." They rose together into the fading rain, leaving the sleepers below. Puck's voice drifted after them. light as the last drop upon a leaf. When morning breaks and dreams depart, all hearts will know their truest part. The sky paled. A thrush began to sing. The midsummer night, with all its tangled love and laughter, folded itself into memory, ready to wake as story. Dawn came shyly through the trees, pale gold threaded with rain. The forest, which all night had trembled with magic and mischief, now sighed in relief, as though the dream were ending and the earth itself could rest. Dew clung to every leaf, bright as glass. The air smelled of damp moss and flowers breathing after storm. There, beneath the soft light, the four young lovers still slept, Hermia and Lysander, Helena and Demetrius, their hands nearly touching, their faces serene. The spells had melted away like mist under sun. Love, once tangled, had quietly found its way back to truth. Puck flitted through the branches above them, humming to himself, his wings glittering with drops of water. All mended, he said, pleased. The storm has passed, and hearts are clean as the morning dew. He perched upon a fern and watched as the first beam of sunlight touched Hermia's cheek. She stirred, sighing softly, and Lysander opened his eyes beside her. For a moment, he blinked as though waking from a dream, half sweet, half strange. Then he smiled, seeing her face. "My love," he murmured, "I thought I lost you." Helena woke next, and with her, Demetrius. He reached for her hand without hesitation, his eyes clear. "Forgive me," he said. "I chased shadows when the light was here all along." Helena's heart trembled, but she saw the honesty in his gaze, the gentleness newly kindled there. "Then we begin anew," she said softly. All around them, the forest came alive. Bees drifted through the ferns, and a single white flower, love in idleness, the very bloom that had caused their night of confusion, opened its petals to the light, its purple heart shining with dew. Overhead, unseen, Oberon and Titania walked hand in hand. Peace had returned between them, and where they passed, the raindrops turned to pearls upon the leaves. "Look how love has righted itself," said Titania. "Even mortals find balance when forgiveness blooms." Oberon smiled. "The storm was needed, my queen, for even hearts that love truly must wander a little before finding home." Puck swooped near, grinning. "And what of me, my lords? Shall I not be praised for such merry confusion?" The fairy king laughed. "Be content, trickster. Your mischief has made harmony, though you did not mean it so." The three stood together in the brightening air. The forest glittered with light and rain, every droplet a memory of the night gone by. Below, the lovers rose, dazed but smiling. Hand in hand, they made their way through the trees toward Athens, the path soft with moss and morning fog. Not far away, they heard voices. Duke Theseus and his hunting party come upon the forest with horns and hounds. "What vision is this?" cried the Duke, halting. "Four lovers found asleep beneath the boughs. Tell us, young hearts, how came you here?" Hermia and Lysander glanced at one another, half laughing. "We came seeking freedom, my lord," Lysander said, "and found it, it seems, in dream." Demetrius stepped forward, still holding Helena's hand. "We sought each other, and now we seek only peace. Grant us leave to wed as our hearts choose." Theseus, touched by their sincerity, smiled. "So be it. This day shall mark a triple union. 3 weddings for one dawn. Let joy follow rain." The horns sounded softly, echoing through the glades. The lovers followed the Duke toward the city, the last drops of rain falling around them like blessings. Behind them, the forest shimmered one final time. The fairies danced unseen among the branches, scattering petals and laughter in their wake. As they vanished into the golden mist, Puck's voice drifted after them, tender now, almost human. If we shadows have offended, think, but this, and all is mended, that you have but slumbered here. While these visions did appear, the morning wind carried his words across the fields, through the city gates, over the shining stones of Athens, until they faded into the hum of waking life. And so the midsummer night ended as softly as it began. A dream washed clean by rain, a song of folly turned to grace. The forest slept again, and in its quiet heart the fairies rested too, keeping their watch between light and shadow, laughter and love. When at last the sun climbed high, its rays caught on a single leaf, still wet with dew, and there, for an instant, the world gleamed as if newly made. Beyond the reach of mortal kingdoms, where rain fell like silk upon emerald hills, there lay a realm of quiet splendor, the land sung of in half-forgotten verses, where every leaf bore a light of its own. This was Faerie, the wide and wondrous country that lived between dawn and dream. Here, where rivers ran clear as crystal and the air shimmered with unseen music, walked a solitary knight. His name was Red Cross, a pilgrim of the soul, seeking truth in a world woven from beauty and illusion. His armor, once bright, was dulled by many travels. His banner, though torn, still bore a single red cross, the mark of faith and perseverance. The rain followed him gently that day, falling in slender threads that glowed like glass. Around him stretched a forest vast and ancient, where the trunks of the trees seemed carved from marble and the moss shimmered with dew. He rode slowly, listening to the sound of his horse's hooves upon the wet earth. Each step felt like a heartbeat, steady and sure. Before long he came upon a still lake, wide and smooth as a mirror. Mist drifted over its surface, and the rain, light as breath, barely disturbed its calm. Red Cross dismounted and knelt by the shore. The water was so clear that he could see the reflection of his face, weary, uncertain, yet brightened by the faint glint of hope. As he looked, the reflection shifted. The ripples formed a figure beside his own, a woman's shape, robed in silver, her eyes deep as the sky at dusk. "Why do you wander, Knight of the Cross?" she asked, her voice mingling with the rain. "I seek truth," he said simply, "and to serve the light that dwells beyond pride and fear." The lady regarded him with a calm both gentle and piercing. "Truth is a lake," she said, "clear only to those who do not stir its waters. Yet few can gaze into it without seeing their own heart." Red Cross bowed his head. "Then I will look, though I tremble." The lady raised her hand, and the rain fell more softly still, until it was a fine mist drifting like incense. "Look, and do not turn away," she whispered. He bent over the water. At first, he saw only the reflection of the sky, grey and endless. Then slowly, other images rose, faces of those he had aided and those he had failed, paths he had taken in pride and those he had walked in faith. Each shimmered across the surface, bright and brief as lightning. At last he saw his own heart, not perfect, but steadfast, wounded, yet still beating with purpose. He felt a weight lift from him, as though some unseen burden had been washed away by the rain. When he looked up, the lady was gone, but the lake glowed faintly, lit from within. From the trees came a low hum, the sound of unseen wings. A white bird descended, landing near his hand. In its beak it carried a single droplet of light. Red Cross took it gently, and it shone like a pearl upon his palm. "A token," he murmured, "of what I must remember." He placed the light within a small glass vial at his belt and rose. The forest opened before him, brighter now, though the clouds still lingered. The rain no longer felt cold, but cleansing, like a benediction. He mounted his horse and continued along the path. The ground sparkled with dew, and every droplet reflected a world entire. The sound of the water faded behind him, But the lesson remained, that truth, like the lake, asks for stillness, that one must look inward before one may see outward. As the day waned, Red Cross saw a glow upon the horizon, faint but steady. Somewhere ahead, he knew, another trial awaited. But he felt no fear. The rain would accompany him, soft and constant, whispering the same words it had since time began. Be still, and you shall find your way. Behind him, the mirror lake lay quiet, holding the reflection of the sky, grey clouds drifting, light breaking through in threads of gold. And in that light, for those who might come after, a single red cross shimmered across the surface, a sign of courage left behind. The forest breathed, the rain fell, and the night rode on. The rain followed Red Cross as he rode, soft and patient. A hymn whispered across the green expanse of Faerie. Beyond the forest and its mirror lake, the path opened into a valley so fair that even the clouds seemed to pause and gaze upon it. The air was fragrant with wild thyme and lilies. The grass shone as though brushed with moonlight, though the sun hid shyly behind veils of mist. At the valley's heart stood a gate wrought of living vines, their leaves trembling with raindrops. Within lay the garden of virtue, tended not by hands but by harmony. Every flower bloomed in time with an unseen melody. Every tree bent in prayer toward the sky. Red Cross dismounted, feeling at once humbled and at peace. He passed through the gate, and the air grew warmer, touched by a golden stillness. The sound of rain softened to a distant lullaby. Beneath a willow tree stood a fountain, its waters rising and falling like breath. Around it grew roses of every hue, their fragrance both grounding and strange. As he knelt beside the fountain, a voice spoke, clear, kind, and steady as flowing water. Welcome, pilgrim. You have come far, and yet your journey begins anew. Red Cross lifted his eyes. Beside him stood a woman clad in green and gold, her hair dark as river moss. In her gaze was patience, in her bearing the quiet power of roots that endure every storm. Who are you, lady? He asked. I am Una, keeper of the garden, and mirror of what is pure, she said. Long have I watched you wander, through pride, through doubt, through trial. Yet still you walk toward the light. Red Cross bowed deeply. I am not without fear, he said. Even now, I wonder if my heart is strong enough to bear the truth I seek. Una smiled, the kind of smile that turned rain to light. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the will to rise despite it. Drink of the fountain, and remember that every drop of water once fell as rain. He cupped his hands and drank. The water was cool and clear, tasting faintly of sunlight. As it touched his tongue, he felt a warmth spread through him, not fire, but the gentle pulse of life renewed. The weariness of his long travels faded, the ache of doubt softened. He looked upon the garden and saw it not as a place apart, but as a reflection of all that lived within him. Una sat upon a stone beside the fountain. This garden is not mine alone, she said. It dwells in all hearts that hold faith. Yet weeds of envy and despair grow quickly when hope sleeps. Your task, dear knight, is not to conquer shadows, but to tend what is living. He listened, the rain mingling with the fountain's song. Then what of my battles, he asked. What of the darkness I have faced? The darkness was your teacher, Una replied. It showed you the shape of your own light. To know peace, one must first see what peace is not. For a long time they sat in silence. The rain fell softly through the willow's leaves, each drop like a thought completing its circle. Somewhere beyond the valley, thunder rolled faintly, far and kind, the sky speaking to the earth. At last, Una rose. You will not remain here, she said. The road still calls, and with it, the souls who wander in need of the same calm you have found. But carry this with you. From the fountain she drew a single rose. pale as dawn. Its petals will never fade, though its scent will grow fainter with time. When you can no longer smell its sweetness, know that it is not gone. It has entered your heart. Red Cross took the rose reverently. Then this garden will never leave me. No, Una said, for virtue is not a place but a way of seeing. He bowed once more. As he turned to go, the rain grew stronger again. Not harsh but alive. Each drop struck leaf and flower, drawing music from the garden's heart. The vines at the gate parted for him, and when he looked back, Una was gone, though her voice lingered in the rain. Tend your garden wherever you walk, and you shall never be far from home. The valley faded behind him. Ahead stretched a plain washed clean by the storm, its air bright with the scent of growing things. The rain shimmered in the distance like a veil of light, and through it, Red Cross rode on, the pale rose pressed to his heart. The raindrops gathered upon his armor and glimmered there, tiny mirrors reflecting the world he had come to understand, fragile, luminous, and endlessly renewed. Night passed slowly over the rain-washed land, and in its quiet turning the stars shone like drops of dew upon an unseen meadow. Red Cross rode onward through that tranquil darkness, his armor faintly aglow from the reflection of the moon. Each breath of wind smelled of wet earth and blooming fields. Somewhere behind him, the garden of virtue lay still, its fountain singing softly in the memory of rain. As dawn approached, the rain lightened to mist. A silver veil draped across the hills. The knight reached the crest of a rise and saw below him a wide plain bathed in pale gold. Clouds drifted low, parting to reveal the horizon trembling with light. It was not yet morning, yet something deeper than daybreak stirred there, a radiance beyond the sun's reach, gentle but infinite. He dismounted and walked forward. The ground beneath his boots was soft, the grass glistening as though lit from within. The air itself seemed to hum, not with sound, but with a steady, living presence. His journey had carried him through darkness and trial, through fear and silence, but now, standing upon that height, all seemed simple again. One world, one breath, one endless, unfolding peace. A figure waited in the glow ahead. At first he thought it might be Una, but as he drew nearer, he saw it was not she, nor any person he had known. It was light given shape, wearing the warmth of every kind face he had ever met. Its eyes held both kindness and mirth, as though smiling at his surprise. "Where have you come from, traveller?" the figure asked, its voice soft as rain on stone. "From the world," Red Cross said, "and all its weight." "And what do you seek?" He bowed his head. "Only to serve truth. Yet I have learned that truth wears many faces. Courage, mercy, love. I have failed each in turn, and found them again in the rain. The light brightened, though it did not blind. Then you have found what every pilgrim seeks. Truth is not a sword, but a seed. It grows when watered by kindness, and its bloom is understanding." Red Cross stood in silence. Around him, the mist began to shimmer like glass. He looked down and saw that every drop of rain held a reflection of Una's garden, of the mirror lake, of every soul he had met upon his path. Each reflected world joined the next until all became one vast, shining circle. "Is this the end of my journey?" he asked. The figure smiled. "It is the end of seeking and the beginning of knowing. The dawn you see is not of this world alone. It rises in all who remember that love is stronger than fear." The wind lifted, scattering the mist. The first true light of morning spread across the plains, and the rain turned to gold in its touch. Red Cross felt warmth upon his face, a joy so deep it was almost stillness. He looked once more at the figure of light. "Then I shall carry this peace back to the living world," he said, "to every heart that waits in shadow. And when you forget it," said the light, "the rain will remind you." The brightness grew, soft and steady. until the figure was gone, or perhaps had become the dawn itself. Redcross closed his eyes, letting the warmth wash over him. He breathed deeply, the scent of rain and wild flowers filling his chest. When he opened his eyes again, the world was clear and new. The clouds had lifted, revealing blue sky beyond imagining. His horse grazed quietly beside him, steam rising from its flanks. In his hand, the pale rose Una had given him glowed faintly, not with magic, but with the living light of morning. He mounted once more and rode down the slope, the path shining before him like a river of gold. Behind him, the rain retreated toward the hills, leaving the world washed clean. And though the story of the Faerie Queene speaks of battles and dragons, of faith and fall, in this quiet retelling it ends where all such journeys must. Not in conquest, but in calm. A night unburdened, a heart made whole, a world renewed beneath the eternal dawn. The rain had finished its work. The day began,